Hey, what is up guys? So we are going to be doing a deck profile for the new Archfiend deck that I was playing, and I'm doing a lot more testing in this deck and I'm kind of learning the mechanics of this deck. But if you guys have any suggestions for this deck, hey, let me know. I'm definitely interested in playing this deck in the future. Now these cards over here are just cards that we'll talk about later. This is not my actual side deck, but let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile and I'll explain my choices as we go along. So first off, I'm playing Double Tragodia. Tragodia is a fantastic card because sometimes if you open up with a more passive hand, maybe you have to set cards and your opponent wants to play a little bit more aggressive, you can survive, and on top of being able to steal your opponent's monsters and dropping, let's say, the Archfiend Emperor in the graveyard, it helps out a lot because you want this card in the graveyard. Sure, you can normal summon it and still pop a card, which is not bad, and you can attack him directly for 15, but usually you want this card in the graveyard, and he's a fantastic card as well. But yeah, Tragodia just helps out, plus he's another fiend, and he's able to help you make XYZ sometimes. He's definitely very nice, especially with Armageddon Knight. If you happen to drop a Tragodia, the next turn you can summon an Armageddon Knight, maybe send a level 4 to the grave, or if you want to get a +1, you can do that as well. Next up, we have 3 Genesis Archfiend. He's basically like a Master Hyperion, so he banishes a Archfiend card, and you are able to pop 1 card on the field. And you can normal summon without tributing, which is really nice. Helps you get him in the grave pretty easy, so he won't be really dead at all. And usually when you want to banish cards, I would recommend you guys to either banish Trance Archfiend or maybe an Archfiend Cavalry. But sometimes you want to keep a Cavalry if you happen to have a Masked Chameleon in your hand, because that is a card we'll talk about later. But basically he's just used for a level 8 Synchro, because there is a lot of great level 8 Synchros that we'll talk about in a moment. But you can also banish Trick Archfiend, but if you happen to have a Call of the Haunted set and maybe your opponent's going to blow up the field and pop your back row, you can use Call of the Haunted as a chainable to get a free +1 off of Trick Archfiend. Next up, we have 1 Dark Arm Dragon. I mean, the whole deck dark, why not? Pretty darn good card. And you can maybe banish a dark monster to later add it back with Trance Archfiend, which is another crazy card that's an Archfiend card. Next up, we have 3 Cavalry. He's basically just your 19 standard beater that basically sits there. Although sometimes, if you happen to have a torrential set or your opponent torrentials you for whatever reason, it's pretty nasty. But unfortunately, it can't attack that turn, but that's okay. And sometimes, it is special summoned during your opponent's turn, and you're able to, like I said, use Torrential Tribute in combination with this card. Because as long as you just destroyed by a card effect, and it doesn't have to be your opponent's, which is really cool. There's also another combo you can do. This card is not actually out yet, the Archfiend Commander. He's coming out, I believe, in Shadow Specters. If you guys want to play this build, personally for me, I found this build to be a little bit cloggy, and I sometimes had a lot of dead cards, especially when I was doing triple Commander, and I was also playing the Empress. So you can try out different builds if you want, and by all means, if you have any new combos, hey, let me know. I'm interested in checking those out. But next up, we have 2 Masked Chameleon. This card is fantastic. It lets you make a quick dueled Red Dragon Archfiend, and this card is insane. I'm not sure if this card, or any of the cards that say Red Dragon Archfiend, if it'll count for dueled Red Dragon Archfiend. Perhaps it won't, but if it does, then you could technically use Scarlet Security, and as long as you control Red Dragon Archfiend. Like I said, I'm not positive if this will count for it, because I know with X Sabers and double X Sabers, it's all good. Don't even worry about it. But sometimes Konami likes to be like, no, that's an exception. But you could basically pop all your opponent's spell and trap cards, and then on top of that, you can blow up all face-up attack position monsters on the field, except for himself. So that is pretty nasty. I mean, that's basically clearing your opponent's board, similar to something like a Judgment Dragon. Although this card, you just use summon. Okay, make a quick, card that's basically a Judgment. This card is absolutely crazy. I like how other monsters can't attack. He can still attack though. He's way too good. But the I'd say the 3 main cards you go for really are Thought Ruler Archfiend, because he is an Archfiend, and Dueled Red Dragon Archfiend, and then on top of that, Crimson Blader is, a fantastic card. This card is probably the best card in the game against dragons. If this card successfully gets an attack up, usually the Dragon Ruler deck won't have really any response for the next turn. They'll have to play it either passive or just completely pass the turn because they can't really make a move at all. So I like Crimson Blader a lot. Next up, Trance Archfiend. He is an Archfiend. He has a decent effect as well. Usually I like to discard this card. But then on top of that, if you happen to have anything banished, you can add a banished dark monster, which is really awesome. It doesn't have to be Fiend, keep that in mind. So you can technically, Dark Arm Dragon maybe gets bottomless, you can add him back later. Next up, 3 Armageddon Knight. This really speeds up the deck, and you know, he is a level 4, so sometimes you can go for, you know, rank 4 monsters that are pretty nasty. But yeah, I like Armageddon Knight a lot in this deck simply because it allows you to send this to the graveyard, and then you get the effect of Archfiend Hyris, or Eris, as it's pronounced, as some of you guys mentioned. But yeah, you just send this to the grave. Sometimes you send this to the grave, maybe you got Called Haunted, you got, you know, you already have enough of the Eris in the grave. Next up, Tutor Guide. This is a fantastic card in this deck. I mean, usually you go for a Trick Archfiend. Another thing I want to mention, a really good first turn is just go for Zen Mains, because when you detach with Zen Mains, you will get the effect of Trick Archfiend. So that's really awesome to know. And then next up, 3 Trick Archfiends, pretty self-explanatory. It adds any Archfiend card. I like how Stratos too good adds just one hero. This adds any Archfiend card. That includes the field spell, that includes all the monsters, and that also includes Archfiend's Roar, which basically allows you to OTK and do a lot of shenanigans in this deck. Or sometimes maybe go for an XYZ if you really need to go for an XYZ. Like Cavalry plus this card could equal an XYZ. And you can actually go for this card over here, King of Feral Imps, and if you already happen to have a Cavalry, hey, you already are set up for a Mass Chameleon next turn. Next up, we play Alert of Darkness, 1 reinforcement of the army, which basically searches your Armageddon Knight because this is a Fiend. Next up, Dark Hole, Foolish Burial, it works with this card. Next up, 2 Duality, 2 Mystical Space Typhoon, a Book of Moon, a 2 Falling Down. This card is really, really nasty, and usually a lot of cards that take opponent's monsters get banned, but Falling Down is legal, and so you have to have an Archfiend card. Keep in mind, this is also a Archfiend card. This is also an Archfiend card on the field, and then you get to steal one of your opponent's monsters forever, as long as, you know, it's still an equipped card. You take 800 points of damage, but usually that's very small. I mean, when did Brain Control become a bad card because of 800 life points? You know, Brain Control was always a really insane card, but that card is banned because stealing monsters is banned, but Big Eye, it's all cool, man. Next up, so we have 1 Archfiend Palace. I usually don't like to play triple these because it doesn't work as well as something like Pandemonium, but unfortunately Pandemonium doesn't count as an Archfiend card. This card is pretty nasty sometimes because all Fiend-type monsters you control gain 500 deck. Usually field spells, they're neutral, as in your opponent also gets the attack boost, but this one, it's pretty good in that aspect that, you know, only you gain the attack. And then also has a pretty decent effect. Usually it's only usable with Tour Guide, unless you're going to be playing the Commander build, and then you will have better access to doing more nasty plays with it. But I really like to play 1. I mean, it's searchable, and I usually only use it when I'm going to be going for an OTK anyways. And next up I play Torrential Tribute because it works fantastic with a lot of the cards in this deck, because, you know, you just add cards anyways. I mean, you summon Armageddon Knight, you go +1 with it, and then whenever they summon something that, you know, you don't want to deal with, Torrential, and who cares about Armageddon Knight? He's not that strong anyways. Next up, 3 Archfiends Roar. This card is really good. It's a searchable card, and it's kind of like a mini Call of the Haunted, but keep in mind, it is destroyed during the end phase, so you're going to either XYZ with whatever you do, or it's going to die. So that's unfortunate with that card, but it's still pretty good. Like I said, it's usually used for when you're going to go for games. Next up, triple Call of the Haunted. It's basically used for this card. Sometimes you can go for Dragodi and do some dirty stuff, but usually it's used for Genesis, Archfiend, or, I'm sorry, Archfiend Emperor, because the TCG and OCG name is a little bit different. And you can technically use it as a trainable, like I mentioned, for a Trick Archfiend if they MST it. And then 1 Forbidden Lance, 1 Lonely Lance over here, because I don't like getting this card bottomless. When this card gets bottomless or Deep Prison, it kind of sucks, especially early on in the game if you don't happen to have some other cards to search it out. As far as the extra deck, this card is amazing. Felbrand, the Divine Dragon Knight, although you won't be able to make it unless you really use Dragodi, and I figured, you know what, I'll put it in here because this card is so darn amazing. If you guys haven't seen what he does, so it's once per turn. During either player's turn, you can attach 1 material, then you get to target 1 face of monster on the field. That target's effects are negated, but it is unaffected by other card effects during this turn. So I think he's pretty awesome. I like this card a lot. Next up, we have Crazy Buck, because sometimes, you know, you can sack some people with Crazy Buck. Nothing's out of the ordinary as far as in the extra deck. Zen Mains, I would recommend you guys to probably play 2 of them. Keep in mind, Levier is really good in this deck also, because if you banish a card, you can always add it back later on, and I do like to play Levier. But there's not really anything that is really needed, other than I would say these 3 synchros are pretty useful. If you want to play Scrap Dragon Stardust, hey, you can play those as well. put this card in here because you can potentially hit for 38 with the field spell, and you know, it's not a bad card at all. Like I said, it's usually used for OTKs, which is kind of strange, but yeah, it definitely does work because usually when you're going to go for an OTK, it involves something with getting back a Genesis Archfiend, and you can't special summon any monsters except for Fiend type monsters, so that's why this card allows you to OTK. A few other random cards I wanted to mention. Robbie was playing, in his build, he was playing the Archfiend General and Pandemonium, and he was playing a Rescue Rabbit, which is pretty nasty. I mean, if you get double Archfiends in the grave, it definitely does help. It's more fuel for your card, plus you can overlay into something like a King of Feral Imps, then add a Masked Chameleon, and potentially go a huge plus. But I don't know, I really don't like just playing 3 normals and then 1 rabbit. If I was going to play that, I'd almost want to play 6 vanillas, because sometimes you draw 2 of the vanillas and then the rabbit you draw is dead, and on top of having 2 vanillas, it's just problems after problems. But in a deck like Evil Swarms, I think it works well because, you know, that 1900 beater, a lot of the cards, when you normal summon, you get an additional normal summon, so it works well for that deck. But these are, you know, other cards I figured I'd mention. If you want, you can play Red Dragon Archfiend. You can actually make the deck revolve around Red Dragon Archfiend because you have so many searchable cards that can just keep on bringing back Red Dragon Archfiend. And he has a pretty nasty effect, and he's got a lot of good support. He's kind of like how Blue Eyes and Dark Magician, they have a lot of great support cards for them. This card is actually hilarious. I thought I'd mention it. So it's an anti-burn card that makes it so you take no damage, and your opponent takes twice the effect damage. That is so funny. I love that. And, you know, it'd be, you know, funny to see some burn player activate something where you take a huge amount of damage and be like, nope, you're taking double that. It's just hilarious. Another thing I wanted to mention, because the Archfiend in the OCG, they're actually called demons. Like this card over here is called the Demon's Palace, and obviously in the TCG we have the different name. We call them Archfiends. And I'm not sure if this was something lost in translation or what, but this is a Gladiator Beast card that is a Archfiend shield. And at first I was like, oh, can I play Gladiator Beast Archfiends? And it doesn't actually work because there is no Gladiator Beast monster that's also an Archfiend or a Fiend monster, unfortunately at the moment. But who knows, maybe in the future we'll see Gladiator Beast Archfiends, and I'll make that deck because I know it'd be kind of fun to see 2 archetypes, you know, kind of combined. And it's strange to see this is an Archfiend card, but who knows, maybe it was one of those cards lost in translation. But from the artwork, it does kind of look like a demonic, looks like some skull with horns hanging out on the side. But, you know, like I said, who knows, in the future, maybe we'll have some crazy deck to play in the future. But yeah, like I said, I'm still testing out the deck and I'm having some fun with it. So this is a build that you guys can run off of because a lot of players wanted me to make an Archfiend deck, and I've been doing a lot of different testing. Like I said, I was trying originally Triple Commander, and it was just problematic. It didn't really work too well. Not nearly as well as just, you know, going for the standard bring back the Genesis Archfiend pop card. It's a pretty simple deck, and it is pretty linear at most times, but sometimes you can combo pretty hard, and with a Falling Down and a Call of the Haunted, you can usually OTK your opponent, especially with, if you have like Tour Guide and I'd say like these 3 cards. Let's put them at the bottom. So if you have, and it could be a combination of either Call of the Haunted or it can be Archfiend's Palace. I would say this equals usually OTK right here. This involves a lot of stuff, and if you have the field spell like that, that opens up a lot of doors as well. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and if you have any suggestions for this deck, like I said, let me know, and let me know how you guys like Archfiends at the moment, because like I said, maybe we'll get more support for them in the future. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Asian Eyes signing out.